I'm live, and it's 12:03 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time here on the East Coast of America. I'm in Southwest Georgia, sort of near Thomasville, Georgia, which is north of Tallahassee, Florida. And I did two separate videos earlier. Well, actually, it was yesterday now because it's past 12. So this is June the 7th now then of 2018. Okay. My name's David Null. My Native American name is Hawkeye Two Feathers. I welcome you. I greet you with the love and honor and of the infinite creator. I bring you blessings, greetings. And if you're listening to me at all, then you're willing to listen to a different point of view. And I'm hoping maybe this might my first video was way too long and I got into a bunch of stuff. I got really passionate in that video and I'm only partially sorry. And I had to stop and I got pulled back, and I had to think about what I said, and I can't remember it all, but I don't think I really pointed too many fingers at too many folks. I don't remember mentioning anybody's name because I wouldn't do that. But if I said something like, as a general statement, and you out there, if you're a nurse, then you don't know what I'm talking about because I know metal. Okay. And then folks who watch that video might go, hey, he's talking to me. Now, to the point, though, I know a lot of people, men and women, who are nurses or in the medical field, and I was not speaking to anyone in particular. I was trying to make an example. And so let me stick to the topic. Now, I put in the beginning of this, I have been a machinist and an engineer. I was a machinist before I was an engineer, but I have just been blessed with being able to work well with machines and see things. And I've had engineers of 15, 20 years experience come up to me and go, how could you tell that was different? And they'd have to get out their little micrometer or their dial calipers. And I'd go, that's not centered. And they'd go, well, how can you tell? And I said, I can tell by my eyeball. And it used to be a big joke with all the engineers and several of the plants that I worked in, because that I would always say, I can eyeball that and tell you that that's not right. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't put anybody down. I would just say, I can see it. And then go, well, wait a minute, how you can see that? And it would just be just a little, we're talking minute amounts. So I have a lot of experience in working with machines. I grew up on Carnival and was setting up and tearing down rides at the age of 12 or 13. I think my first time was at the age of 12, tearing down the train in the kiddie section there at Most Turtle Redeemer Church, which isn't there anymore. But anyway, that was way back in the early 60s. And so I've been tinkering with machines all my life. I've worked on engines. I've rebuilt several motors and folks and this and that. Worked on farm machinery. I've worked in places that literally don't exist anymore. If you tried to look them up, they wouldn't be there. And I realized the other day that the reason I was hanging on to a 30-year-old phone book, it's because it has some of these places in the yellow pages. So if I make reference to something, I can go get my 20-year phone book and go, see, I used to work for these people. They were here, But anyway, so I have worked on machines that, 15 feet tall, 100-ton press. There was like 10 feet of concrete under this thing. Humongous. And, I help build the dies and the tooling, help run it, help stamp out steel with it. I'm talking about from zero to finished product. I worked in shops like this, all types of things. Wheels, like for the wheels for go-karts and things. I mean, just little tiny little brass parts that were contacts inside of a like a marine hazard or emergency light. Okay, I mean, just all kinds of little things, big things, stamped, welded, punched, whatever. And so I know my way around a machine shop. I started in a machine shop before there was ever any kind of computer controlled or numeric controlled. CNC is computer numeric controlled, whatever the device, whether it be a milling machine or a lathe or whatever, grinder. I've done precision grinding to where if I were to hold up the side of a piece of paper, on edge, the tolerances that I work on would be 1/10 the thickness of a piece of paper. 1/10 the thickness of a piece of paper. And I did that all the time, every day. That was my job. I know what I'm speaking about when I speak about these things. I'm not bragging. It is what I have done in my lifetime. My last job, for example, I almost went to work for Pratt & Whitney up in Columbus, Georgia. They have a huge plant up there that makes all different parts of Pratt & Whitney engines. And I knew the lead engineer up there. I won't drop his name, but I don't know if he's there anymore, but that's not the point. First name was Ernie, by the way, but he was a wonderful fellow, taught me a lot, and I taught him a few things because what they were trying to tell me I could do, or how to grind something, when you actually took it out to a machine and tried to give them what some design engineer did who had never ground a piece of metal in his life. Well, this is how you do it, boy. Well, okay, then you come out here and you show me how to grind it like that. I'll sit here and watch, and then you show me if you can do it, then I'll duplicate what you asked for. And so, but with that though, we were able to do things in our plant down in Thomasville when I worked down there, and I helped build jet engine parts. We built great big fan blades that were this big, that were made out of titanium and weird kinds of aluminum. Made them for the Pegasus motor for Rolls-Royce. I worked on JT8, JT9, and a couple of other different designations. Most of them were Pratt & Whitney engines, but we did do blades for other types of engines. So my job was to make the gauges for these things, what they called the no-go gauge. And it had to be really tight. So the operators would get them, they're buffing them down, they're cleaning them, making sure they're all polished, and they'd put them into gauge. And if the gauge wasn't right, well, yes or no, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, there are very few people who could grind these gauges, and I was one of the people. I learned how. I was taught by one of the best from Brown and Sharp, from up north somewhere back in the day. I was only one of 5 people in the United States at that time that could operate this particular type of Brown and Sharp grinder called a pantograph. And I was able to hold tolerances that other folks couldn't do, because the gentleman, I listened to the guy who taught me, and he said, Dave, if you go like this and keep this in mind, and I listened to him. And he came down, they installed this machine, and I had a couple of months of working with it and this and that. And he came back down to Thomasville to see how I was doing. And he told me, he said, I'll be son of a gun. He goes, you're just as good as I am. And I've been at this for 15 years. And I had only been grinding on that machine. I was a grinder of other types, but I was able to pick up because I listened and I learned, and I was able to adapt what was needed. Now, so I know what I'm talking about in those respects. My last particular job was long. It wasn't quite 8 years, 7.5. I pressed a light wire in Tifton, Georgia. And I use this one because my most recent, because I was aware of what was going on within the business. Now, Prestolite Wire, our particular company, we made spark plug wires for Chrysler, Ford North America, and also Ford of Europe. So there were, 2 Fords and the Chrysler. We did for Nissan. We did for Honda. We did a bunch of aftermarkets because one of the major, like an AutoZone or somebody, we sold aftermarket spark plug wire sets to, I can't remember the name. Anyway, they had several of them going on. So my job was to try to condense the amount of tooling that they had in the plants, streamline it to where we could interchange parts better, and also to train the operators to quit breaking tooling. And it was also my job to try to, we experimented with new types of metal. Now, this is where I'm headed with the steel and the tariffs and that kind of thing. Took me a little way, but I had to give a little bit of pre to this, okay? So I started working with Crucible Steel. There were a couple of other steel companies, but Crucible Steel had exactly the type of metal, and their process was one that was just right on, all right? Now, my reason for doing this is because my earlier videos, I stressed people who don't understand about what's going on with the steel tariff don't know about steel. They don't know what's happened in manufacturing. They don't know when it started. So all they can do is gripe and complain and talk about how bad Trump is. Now, this is not about Trump, but it is about what he did about the tariffs. Okay. Now, let me go back in history just a little bit. This started back when Billy Clinton was in office. Okay. And at that time, because that's when I started with Prestolite, was in the 90s. Right after Billy got elected the second time. So I was at Prestolite for his whole second term, and first George Bush and into his second term. Okay, give you just a time frame. While I was at Prestolite, though, from the time I started to the end of Billy Clinton's term, NAFTA had begun before they actually signed the deal, because there was metal coming in from other countries, and there were people coming in from other countries. Things were being brought in across the border north that we couldn't send south. So Mexico could send anything they wanted to. And the reason I say that is because there's a plant down in Nogales, New Mexico, or is it Arizona? Anyway, Nogales, that Prestolite, right at 800 jobs in 2 plants, okay? Some people had been there 15, 20 years. All went to Mexico during the Bush administration, okay? NAFTA. And I was the second person in the state of Georgia to receive the extended benefits that Congress and George Bush passed in an emergency type deal because of all the jobs being lost to NAFTA. I was the second person in the state of Georgia, which was like a few days after the damn bill passed, man. Okay. Now, with that said, so being in charge of getting material, buying material, I was an engine. I did all 3D drawings, all the CAD drawings. I've got, somebody said, well, how do you have proof? And I said, I have copies of drawings I did, and my name's all over them and the date. I can prove I was there. I can prove I did these drawings. I even have some on disc, CD, that kind of thing, if somebody needs proof. My point is, though, that I was very much aware of where material was coming from. Bethlehem Steel had closed, a huge company. There was another company I still can't remember the name of, and I kind of did a little bit of search earlier. And the thing is that at this time, NAFTA, okay, there's a big push, except China. Oh, we want to be friends with China. We don't want to piss them off, right? Okay, I don't want anybody to be mad either. You know what I'm saying? So, but to give our jobs away, and that's what they did. I mean, they just didn't close down a couple of plants and send them to Mexico. No, they shut down the steel plants, okay, to where there was only 1 or 2. I think there's one in Birmingham, Alabama that I had forgotten about, and they still do good steel, but a lot of that is like pig iron and structural steel and stuff like that. Whereas crucible steel was more into tool steels for machinery and things, hardened steels and bearings and that kind of thing. All right. So if you've listened up to now, you should understand just by my jargon and things, I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. So as I was having to order these metals and things, we as a company and also other engineers, I was in, we were receiving parts and things and pieces of machinery from all around the United States, okay? And parts, some of them were from Canada. And so my job was to check these things and make sure they were to specifications. I had the drawings, I was in charge of the drawings, and I was in charge of finalizing. If I didn't put my approval on it because of my eagle eye kind of deal, it didn't get passed. It went back through inspection. We went back, and if we had to, it sent back to the original company. We had to be very strict because of our Q 9001 thing and all this other kind of stuff, right? And so, and we had to cooperate, and also, oh, what's the word? Anyway, the Japanese have these things that they want on how they have their stuff. It's sort of like a feng shui of business, and we had to follow that pattern. Wasn't really difficult, but we had to follow their pattern. Their product, their stuff going in their brand new cars, okay, not a problem. So we noticed that it started with some of the material coming in. They were getting some steel in that was supposed to be American made, stainless steel, mind you. And they were having trouble where they'd never had trouble before. Now, these dies run like a sewing machine. I mean, they go, ba-doom, 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 ba-doom. And if they don't get clogged, they'll run all day like that unless they run out of material, okay, or a part breaks. But if you do it right, ba-doom, 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 and I mean, they're stamping out little parts and shoving them down. They're bending, turning, doing all kinds of stuff. Ba-doom, 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 ba-doom. Okay. They're calling me up going, Dave, have you had any problems down there, issues with your stuff? Yeah, well, blah, blah, blah. Well, we're starting to have really bad trouble. And so we did a little bit of investigation. Come to find out, the company they were buying their huge rolls of stainless steel had gotten some from China. Oh, my God. It wouldn't run. They had purchased tons. I'm talking like 15 tons of steel, stainless steel, supposed to be to a certain spec, would not run in their dies. It gummed up. So then they started doing a spectral analysis. They take a clip of the metal and they burn it, set it on fire, heat it up real good, and then kind of do a picture of it. And then the sparks that come off of it will tell you really close what's in the metal and whether or not it corresponds to what it's supposed to be. If it's got a particular ASTM standard and it's supposed to have so much vanadium and chrome and blah, blah, blah in it, then it better have. All right. Didn't have. So then they're trying to send all this metal back to the person they bought it from. And he's going, wait a minute, I got it from China. I can't send it back to China. Y'all going to have to eat it. What? So they're stuck with this material because they can't return it because the guy who bought it, who they trusted down the line, blah, 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 got it off a boat from China. Okay, now that was about 2002, right after the towers went down, which was horrible. Many of us engineers watched it and went, not an airplane. Oh, I used to work at Mall Aircraft. I built small aircraft. No, I'm sorry. No, you can't burn down a building. No, sorry. Another subject, another day. But I'm telling you, as an engineer and structural engineer, and no, plane didn't do that. So back to the metal. So they're stuck with tons of this stuff. So we have to work out a deal because they're like, man, we'll give this, we'll cut the cost in half if you can learn how to run this in your dies, if you don't have too many problems. So we made some adjustments and blah, 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 and tweaked it a little here and there. And, but the end result was we got it to work until they got rid of the metal. But they were stuck with tons of this stuff. Okay. China, bad metal, 2002. Okay. Another large steel company closes in the United States. Why? Because China is dumping this steel at 1/4 the cost. Now, we can't run it in our machines because it's not the right specifications. It's kind of close, and once in a while, we'd actually get a roll that would run pretty good. And then the next 4 rolls would run like crap. You know, it was the metal. Not my fault, not his fault, not the next guy's, but the guy who bought it from China and tried to pawn it off as American metal. Okay, now, some more of the story. So I'm working out deals with different steel companies to get the right quality tool steel for our machines. There were some of the tools that were in our machines that would only run 100,000 parts. Now, these folks would run 10,000, 12,000 parts in one shift, and they ran 3 shifts, okay? And that's if it didn't break, okay? But 100,000 was the most they could get. I think 1 or 2 made it to about 125,000. Okay. I started working with different types of metal, and we came up with one from Crucible Steel, and special type, special this, special designation, okie dokie. We put it in, and it ran 1,000,000 parts and was still running, okay? 1,000,000. So that's 10 times. Well, no, 100,000, 10,000, a lot more. Now, it cost 3 times as much, but the machine didn't get shut down. Production continued. It ran real well. Okay, so it cost 3 times as much. So fine, we built our prototype and went back to the people who made it and said, okay, we want a dozen of these because we're going to use them in that machine, that machine, that machine, and that machine because they all use the same tool. Okay, fine. He gets the material, and about 2 weeks later gives me a call and says, okay, they're ready. They send them over. I check them out, and I look at them. We go to put them in and try to run them. They won't run. Now, I'm looking at a couple of them, and there's pits. They had to grind real smooth, I mean, polished like glass for these things to go in the machine. And they did, and that's why they were $200 a piece, okay? But they were worth it. They had to be. So, but at 200 a piece, you don't want to be breaking a bunch of them. So we put them in, and it wouldn't run. So I was looking at them, and I take them back, and I mean, we had microscopes and all kinds of special tools laser guided kind of stuff in our metrology lab. Take it back, take a look, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, this thing's got pock marks all over it. So out of the 10 or 12 that we got, there was only 2 of them that were any good looking at them, okay? And so I called the guy up. I said, you got to come over here and take a look at this, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So then he's like, well, I don't know what, this is bad material, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't know that the person who made it didn't buy it from Crucible. He bought it from a third party trying to save a little money on the side. We were more than willing to pay him double the price of what he was already asking because we knew how good it would run. Instead, he bought some Chinese tool steel reported to be the same. It wasn't. So I call the guy up from Crucible. He comes all the way down from Indiana because this is a big special project. I mean, Prestolite did like $360 million worth of business every single year. So we're putting it out, right? So he comes down from Indiana on a special trip to see me, to check this tool and to find out what's wrong. Now he's like, well, this don't even look like our tool steel. Well, let me take a piece of this back. He said, where did you get this from? And blah, blah, blah. And the machinist and the owner of the place is backing up, and he's covering his mouth, and he's backing up, and he's covering up. And I'm turning around and looking at, where are you going? I said, didn't you get this material from Crucible? No. What? I mean, and my boss was standing there, who was the lead engineer for Chrysler and Ford of North America. Okay. Big wig in the deal. He looked over at the guy and he said, where did you get this material? I bought it from I think it came from China. And the three of us were going, oh, crap. This guy came all the way down to Georgia now from Indiana from his plant and made a special trip. I mean, like, he didn't fly down, but he drove, and he flew when he drove because he was here the next day. And an old man, older than I was at the time, and about ready to retire. And he's trying to please us, and I'm like, holy crap. It came from China. So the more we got into them, then there were other things there was another company who had the same issue. They bought some material because they thought one of the only tool companies left in America was too pricey. They bought Chinese metal, and they got stuff in here, and we had to run them, and we looked at them and said, sorry, where did you buy your material? China. We did get some from Russia. That was some better, but it wasn't crucible. Now, where am I going with this? In 2002, we already knew. Those of us in manufacturing companies, those of us engineers who had to work every day and watch our machines break and figure out why a month ago it ran okay and it was sort of normal, and now all of a sudden they won't even run a third of the parts, and it's supposed to double the parts. Wait a minute, well, we went backwards. So we, as a group of engineers, had talked. I'm talking all of Canada, California. There were several places out there, Indiana, Illinois, a couple of places. I can't remember. But anyway, the Nissan plant, we were selling parts to them. I think that's in Tennessee. There was a Honda plant in Ohio, and I think one in Tennessee as well, Marysville or something. So, but anyway, we were all having the same issue in 2002, all right? And it was getting worse. Now, a lot of these other companies either went out of business or I don't have contact with them. I know several of the engineers that went to the Nissan plant, and they just were like, we can't deal with this mess. I had them calling me up, and I'm not even, they were calling me up for issues that weren't related to the wires. God, what do you think? But we were sharing information about tools and steels and this type of thing. Very important, right? Well, Prestolite got shut down in Thomasville. In Tifton. 800 people, more or less, lost their jobs to Nogales, Mexico. We saw then, before I left, the tool steel, the structural steel. Boom. Why? What was NAFTA? NAFTA lifted tariffs so that Mexico's cheap labor force could compete with, listen to me, it's the truth, because Clinton even said it, and even Bush, but so we could compete on the global market. We allowed their cheap stuff to come in. That's what NAFTA was. Now, Billy had about 4, 5, 6 countries on the original NAFTA. By the end of George Bush Jr.'s term, we were up to like 16 or 18 countries. Now, wait a minute. NAFTA, North American Free Trade. What? Can you name 18 countries above the equator? I can't. There's Mexico, Guatemala. There's Canada north of us. Panama, maybe 8. How did we get up to 18? They included South America. Well, wait a minute. Isn't this the North American Free Trade Agreement? NAFTA? Then how come South America's in this? Well, then at the end of Bush and Obama come in, guess what? Oh, we want to extend some of this to China because we are trying to, this is their words, level out the playing field globally. So they dropped the tariffs on, even worse, for steel coming in from China and other places. Now And some of these people are my good, I would consider my good friends, who I don't think will speak to me now, but they need to get a grip. I'm sorry. I was a Democrat until, you know, I would have voted for Bernie. I voted for Bernie in the primary, but you know, of course, he got screwed, and that was an obvious what. We all knew Hillary didn't win that, you know, so I was already pissed. And then with Obama and what they've done with our Social Security, it's not just mine, but I've spoken about this before. I should have got $12.50 a month. I got $800. The law was passed 2009-ish. I have records. And I have a special letter from the judge, too. So people who are complaining right now about the steel tariffs don't understand what's been happening. You need to go back into history and check your history lessons. Because if all you're going to do is mimic what mainstream media is saying, if you're only going to do the mimic, meme, blah, 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 then never mind. Because I'm trying to give you some truth in this, where all of our manufacturing. Now, at the time this thing was going on, they did the extended benefits and so forth. At the end of that, somewhere about 2010, I remember a report in one of the engineering journals that I was still getting copies of, and that approximately 15 million manufacturing jobs, that's not counting supporting workers, but 15 million manufacturing jobs that could be manufacturer of jeans or underwear or golf clubs, manufacturing companies, 15 million people in like 9 years. That's about 2 million jobs lost per year without being able to, there no other job. I knew people who were my age and older, couldn't find a job, lost their home, they lost their cars, they lost everything, had to move into a tiny old rental. And these folks want to argue about whether or not we should have tariffs on steel. The reason we are in this issue right now is because Clinton, Bush really bad, and Obama took the tariffs away. NAFTA is free trade. It's not free trade going south. It's free trade coming in. We have to lower our standards to allow the rest of these third world countries to catch up with us. That's what they mean by we have to help level the playing field. It means we as Americans lose our jobs so that other people in other countries can be as rich as us. I mean, that's their thinking. While we go to work for Burger King or Arby's or Lowe's, because several of my friends who were making at least $25,000 to $30,000 a year and deserved it are making half that. How can you keep up your car if you knew you had plenty of money when you had a good job, and now all of a sudden you didn't walk out? It wasn't because you did your job bad. It's because they decided they just don't damn like you anymore. And we're going to go see if we're going to go hire people for 25 cents on the dollar we can hire you from, and they ought to be able to learn this no problem. Why were we so successful? It's because we had good, talented people. They respected the work they did. They appreciated the pay they got for the work that they did. We worked as a team, 700 and some odd people, 2 plants. We were able to work together to do the right thing for the company, and they sold us out. And it's because of steel. Good portion of it because we couldn't do it on there. Now, they could send it to Mexico and make up some kind of excuse. We were complaining too bad, so we had to go. Well, and so did the machines and all the jobs and the aluminum jobs that we used to have. When I drove to work, I had to go by an aluminum extruding plant. It went out of business because China was making aluminum extrusions cheaper than we could. So the whole plant shut down. The people who supplied the plant, the people at the plant, all the stuff that went with it, the infrastructure, gone. And people are complaining about tariffs by Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close this here in a second, minute, whatever. If you in your heart believe that tariffs are bad for America, then you don't want America to have jobs. Hear me? I'm making this really simple. If you are against the tariffs, then you want everybody else to have a job but Americans. Do you want jobs for Americans, or do you want jobs for the Chinese or the Canadians or the Mexicans or the Brazilians or pick the country, because there's about 20 of them now. In the North American Free Trade Agreement, it should only be Mexico and Canada. Duh. But if you want to continue to ride on this tirade that Trump is wrong with the tariffs of any type, whether it's the steel or the aluminum, if we're getting in something at half the cost of what we Americans can make it, then they got to pay up. I'm sorry. I would much rather pay $2 more for a shirt and know it was made here in America than an American made the money, could pay his bills or her bills, buy food for their family, and raise and be an American. Not get it from China, not get it at a substandard type. I mean, I've bought tools over the last 10 years, and we used to get steel from America, and they were American tools, even though they were the cheaper grade. Once the steel quit coming into America, even Craftsman tools started breaking. And I've got Craftsman tools that are older than me. I'm 65, and I inherited some of these tools. I have jumped up and down with pipes on these things. I bought a brand new Craftsman tool, and I didn't even have to put a wrench on it. I was just trying to undo a thing. It busted, burst, cracked. I went back to the store. Okay, it's a Craftsman tool. We give you another one. I went through 2 wrenches, and the guy was like, well, I'm not going to give you another one. And I was like, you said you guaranteed these damn things for life. I brought another one, an old one. I said, see this one? This one's 55 years. It was 55 years at the time. This one's 55 years old. This piece of crap here is only 2 weeks old. I went off on this guy the second time because he was like, well, I'm not going to give you a third. I don't deal with Sears anymore, by the way, but that's also to show in tools and oh my God, people don't get it. The stuff you're getting in your, for example, can opener. I used to buy a can opener that was made in the United States. It was a cheap one, $2 or $3, no problem. All right, you clamp down on it and you twist the knob, okay? They're really old, been around for a long time. I have went through 4 of them in 3 months because whatever kind of metal they're making out of now, when you try to open up the can, it doesn't follow the can around. It literally chews the gear up on the can opener. I've got one again that's 15, 20 years old that it works better, even though it's not as good as all these brand new ones. And as I was clamping down on one and trying to turn the handle broke. Chinese steel. People don't know. People don't know. You just don't know. Bring the manufacturing back. Do your homework. Check back through. I'm telling you, please, get off this steel, aluminum, whatever the tariff is. It is good for America. I've 45 years in working in and out of this business. I'm telling you, this is a good thing. Stop listening to the lies, because if we can start making our own steel again and it's already going to improve because we're going to put Americans back to work. And that's what it's all about. Now, I'm your friend and neighbor here in South Georgia. I send greetings and love from my heart to yours, and I mean that whether you agree with me or not. It's okay. I love you anyway, but these are things I have touched, seen, bought, smelled, worked with. That's my story. But you got to get off the kick that it's a bad thing. It's not. It's a good thing. Trump's doing a good job with at least this part. We'll see about the rest. And by the way, a little bit of info. Supposed to be something really kind of funky go on about June 11th. And I heard it from one source, and then I heard it way out of left field from a totally separate source. And then again, it came kind of back up and swung past, and I heard it from another source. And I was like, well, and I was kind of getting some information about the 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And the reason is because June the 12th is George Bush Sr.'s birthday. There's usually some kind of thingy going on. Creepy, cabally-bally. Hope not. Guess what day they're supposed to have the summit? On George Sr.'s birthday? Is that a coinky-dink? Also, June the 14th is Trump's birthday. Really? And there's supposed to be intel coming in on the 11th, the day before Georgie's, and also on the 13th, just before Trump's. Don't have any more inside intel than that, but that's the inside intel. And these sources, I don't think they know each other. At least they don't talk about one another, okay? So to hear the same thing from, and I try to pick the most obscure places to listen for intel. And when I hear it from obscure place number 49 over there in the corner, well, oh, really? You know about this? I didn't know you knew about this. And then, oh, whoa. And it comes, and then sometimes you get an actual something over the wire. Well, something, Donald Trump, the 11th, blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay. But it's all supposed to be good for patriots, Americans, and even as the other folks call them, lefty loonies. I don't like to use terminology. I'm using theirs. I'm just saying, y'all, it's time to take the red pill. Flush the blue pill down the toilet, all right? Flush it down. Don't think twice. Just pop that red pill in your mouth. Get you some good old coffee. It says, live in the moment. I know it's a dirty cup. Live in the moment. I'm drinking my coffee, and I'm saying good evening to y'all. And be nice to one another. That's why I try to do this and explain a little bit. And thank you for putting up with me if you're still here at the end. But if you know the real truth of what has gone on the last 20 years, literally, because this started in 98, okay? I started at Prestolite in about 96. So I was already in the business working for Machinist and stuff. That's beside the point. But I was literally up to here in tier 1 protocol with the auto industry since 98 until 2005. Okay. So, and I can prove it, blah, blah, blah. That's not the point. Go back and do your homework. Look at what's there. Because you might, and you got to keep an open mind. Okay. I'm giving you another point of view, maybe. And listen, here's this, and this is this, and just think about it. Go back in there. Don't believe me, but this is how we as a manufacturing base saw it, and still do, actually. God bless Trump or whoever's up there for bringing back, any kind of manufacturing to America. We need it. These younger folks today, if I couldn't get a job, I didn't want to work at a hamburger joint. No, but I wanted to learn how to run that weird machine over there that kept going up and down, chop, 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 chop. That interested me. Folks around here don't have that. And there used to be machine shops all over the place. You could at least get a part-time job a couple of days a week, or maybe on a second shift, or when they needed to run and needed extra help. I mean, that was always a job with manufacturing down here in the South. We don't have it anymore. We don't build trailers down here anymore. We don't build these other things. We don't build spark plug wires. They tried to take away the plant that builds the airplane parts, airfoils, the blades that go inside jet engines, but that's still there at the moment. But why would we buy jet engines for our military jets from the Israelis? Somebody should check into that. And that's been going on for 20 years, okay? Somebody should check into that now. I'm sorry, but we lost jobs here in America when someone went overseas and set up a special plant in Israel. Oh, because they didn't want to buy the parts from us. They didn't want the lag time. It's only a couple of days if you get your order in early. Come on. But the military buys millions of dollars worth of spare parts, not from Americans, but from the Israelis. You can check it out because they do like yearly contracts. So they'll send out a contract once a year. Well, we got the JT8 this year. Woo! Stage 9, stage 10. Woo! We don't have stage 11. Oh, crap. All right, but we picked up another JT9 stage 4 and 5. Okay, because the Israelis don't want to make it. What? Because the Israelis don't want to make them. Oh, because they're hard to make and they don't like them, but these are easier and you can make more money. So they can, what? So it was so crazy. There was one particular time when I was working for TRW that something happened in Israel and they couldn't make one of their deliveries for our jet airplanes. And word came in because where the machine shop was like right next to engineering. And the engineer come busted through the door going, okay, everybody, we're having a meeting right now. And I mean, it was like, what? And we all gathered around. Okay, listen here. That, the Navy had an order and blah, blah, blah. And, they've asked us if we can come up with, 200 parts for this these types of engines. Okay. Well, I don't know. What have we got? Okay. So we all discussed it. How long would it take for us to set it up? We had blanks that we could make the parts with. We had all the stuff to do it because we just lost the contract, but Israel couldn't make it. So, but the weird thing is we busted our butt to do this. And you know what? The Navy wouldn't pay us what our price was. Special setups. Stop what you're doing. We need these parts. They sent us what the Israelis were going to get paid. They didn't pay us any extra for any of our hard work, but we did get paid. We did get money, and, we went out of our way and all that kind of thing. But what we were trying to do good was for our country and for the U.S. Navy. And then after they bought them, so that lot, they went and bought them, the rest of them then from the Israelis. Folks just don't know. I mean, we're getting lumber from Canada and Russia. Why is Lowe's selling Canadian and lumber from Russia? My God. Okay, I can see Canada. It's across the border. But Russia? Yeah, check it out. It's so strange world we live in. But we're going to do better if people awake and we be kind to one another. So remember this. It's key. Don't hate. Let's debate. Let's debate and knock off the hate. Okay? Let's debate and stop the hate. Greetings. I love you. Have a good night or day or whenever time you know. Okay? So from my soul heart and my heart soul to yours, be kind, be compassionate, and understanding above all. And we're going to make it through this mess. Bye, y'all. 3, 2.